Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sree Iyer. Any moment, any hangout with Abhijit Iyer-Mitra, or should I say Abhijit Doron Iyer-Mitra, is full of events, full of unexpected surprises. And Abhijit is currently suffering as a Delhiite the new agitation that has started by the farmers of India. Although they would like to say that they are all farmers, but evidently they are mostly concentrated from one or two states. To know more about this and to understand his suffering and how he would like to solve this problem, let's join Abhijit. Abhijit, welcome to PGurus channel. What do you make of this farmer agitation?
Har Har Mahadev, Sree, thank you for having me on, and thank you for pointing out, the enormous suffering I'm going through, because, as a person, an underprivileged person who owns an underprivileged BMW, I'm not getting subsidies and I'm feeling traumatized by it. Can you understand how deprived I am that my BMW doesn't get subsidized? I own a house and even that wasn't subsidized, and I'm planning on joining these protests and asking for subsidies as well. Do you understand how ridiculous that just sounded?
Yes.
That is exactly what the farmers are doing right now. Okay, let's be clear how much we spend on these farmers. First, they contribute 17% to the GDP of this country. Okay, yet they take up 1/3 of the national budget one way or another. Officially, when you look at it, they're only getting $14 billion in agricultural subsidy. When you add up everything, they get $101 billion every single year. And that is the most ridiculous thing. You add it all up. It is $14 billion in agricultural subsidies, $7.5 billion in fertilizer subsidy, some more in fertilizer import, $20 billion worth of agricultural imports on top of what these so-called annadatas produce, okay, are not able to produce to meet local demand. And of that $14 billion we produce, almost an equivalent amount of the rubbish that they produce that nobody wants to buy rots. It rots in storage and it rots in transit even before it reaches the consumer. Okay, then 90% of all our fresh water gets sent off to these farmers, of which about 60 to 70% is just wasted because they don't use drip irrigation, they don't use anything of that sort. Now, on top of this, have you seen their latest list of demands? The 6-point demands that they've put out today. Have you seen it?
No.
Let me read it out to you. It is a particularly enlightening document. It will show you what the genesis of this entire protest is. Okay, let's start. Repeal these 3 acts, okay? Make MSP and state procurement of all crops a legal right of the farmers. Implement Swaminathan Commission report to fix MSP with C² plus 50%. Okay, so they want an increase in the subsidy. Repeal the Air Quality Management Act in the National Capital and Adjoining Areas Ordinance 2020. They want the right to gas us like gas chamber, like Dr. Mengele or whatever running Auschwitz. Basically, these are concentration camp guards. They are not farmers. Okay, and they want the right. They want it to be legalized. Diesel prices for agriculture to be slashed by 50%. More subsidy on top of that. Final, most important case, withdraw all cases against the farmer leaders all over India and against intellectuals, poets, lawyers, writers, human rights and democratic rights activists. Those who have been jailed in false cases should be released. What does this have to do with farming?
That's a very good question.
Now, right. So understand what the nature of this is. All the farmers all across India are happy, except Punjabi farmers, plus a few farmers in Haryana and UP. And the Haryana farmers, remember, they are not actually upset with this. They joined, remember, there were no protests to begin with. Why did they join later? Because ML Khattar is not a Jat. ML Khattar is a Punjabi Baniya, and all the Khap Panchayats want to teach the BJP a lesson for nominating a non-Jat as the Chief Minister of Haryana. Okay, so this is the entire dynamic of what is going on out here. In Punjab, it is a different issue. You have these very powerful interests who have basically scrounged off the subsidies given so long for poor farmers. They are the bigger farmers and they are the middlemen who run all these sabzi mandis and things like that, who are basically, and you know this as well as I do, that either of us, if we put in enough money, we can also organize a protest with some 5-6,000 people. If you've got enough biryani cash to distribute, buses to organize, all of that, you can get a rent a crowd. Okay, that is what these people have done. Now, I was fine with all of that. Protesting is your legal right. All right, just so long as you don't cause a public nuisance. Not only are they causing a public nuisance, they have now upgraded it to a blockade of Delhi. And mind you, under international law, a blockade is an act of war. Okay, so they've crossed the line of illegality, and now they are basically holding the government to ransom. And this government, let us be absolutely clear about this, in terms of national security, they've been A-grade dunces. Okay, they never fix the intelligence apparatus, they never fix the law and order apparatus for whatever reason, or they're good at it and they just don't do it because they think there's some political capital to be gained. Right, and there is a constant, there is a stream of these things. They could not predict what kind, intelligence bureau couldn't predict what kind of reaction CAA and NRC was going to lead to, even though you claim that you've had your eyes on Shaila Rashid, Umar Khalid and all these people for a long time. Then you couldn't predict how it was going to morph into Shaheen Bagh. You had no penetration inside Shaheen Bagh and didn't know what those guys were planning within Shaheen Bagh. You did not know that was going to morph into the Delhi riots. You didn't know what the hell the Tablighi Jamaat was up to. Okay, and then when they're caught openly violating the laws, the national security advisor of a nuclear country has to go begging on all fours to the Tablighi Jamaat to please shut it down. Okay, there is something very, very seriously wrong with the governance in this country under, I think, the NDA 2 is somehow coming out a bit like UPA 2 in that sense. I think this is going to be the end of the upwards curve, and this is going to be the beginning of the downwards curve in all of this. That said, I think we should appreciate all these farmer acts that are coming through, because this is a reform genuinely worth fighting for. The only problem is we don't understand if the government is actually going to follow through with all of this. See, with Article 370, when they removed it in Kashmir, we've discussed this on another program in PGurus, they haven't done the follow through. They haven't deconflicted the economy. So they've essentially ensured the conflict remains. Is it for electoral gains? I don't know, but that's probably it. With Shaheen Bagh, their entire electoral chances were on being seen as a strong and law and order party. They should have crushed Shaheen Bagh. They never did. They paid the price for it irrespective. But see, it is the rule of law that gets damaged because of all this political calculus. The BJP gains, but India loses. Okay, and in that, I don't think the BJP is any better than the very worst of Congress politicians who play these tricks to, for personal gain, screw the country.
Abhijit, one could argue that the intelligence has a slightly different way of handling these things. Like, for example, if I just walk back and look at what happened post the Delhi riots, then one of the explanations given was that they wanted to smoke out all the bad elements, bad actors, and then they systematically went about charge sheeting them. There are now truckloads of cases against everybody who instigated the riots. And this, if he had not done it, if he had just come down hard, then we would never have been able to flush these people out. Be that as it may, I don't know, I'm sorry, let me just finish. I don't know if this COVID, which came after that, has had a worse effect on this, because what I'm being told is the illegals of Delhi are staying put. The legals have gone back to their hometowns, and when the legals come back to occupy, they may find that there is nothing left to occupy. What are your thoughts?
That is absolutely true. But look, I reject this notion that they, played this master strategy in order to entrap these people. And I'll tell you why. This is the same bullshit explanation that is given for Nehru. If you read Srinath Raghavan's book War and Peace in Modern India, he says, Nehru did not like playing his cards early. He liked waiting because that multiplied his options. This is his hypothesis. Yes, yet his book actually proves the exact opposite. The longer Nehru waited, the worse things got till India had no options to play at the end of the game. Right? This happened with China, this happened with Pakistan, this happened with everyone around us. Now, what happens here is you have to understand crowd control. The moment a crowd gathers, the game is lost. There is no easy way of solving it anymore. The secret of crowd control is to prevent the crowd from gathering in the first place. If you do not do that, then you have basically failed. Because uske baad खून खराबा होगा, bloodshed होगा. There's nothing you can do about it. Right? So I don't buy this argument that they waited, because even looking at the charge sheets, the charges are so weak. There is no proof. They are insisting on this theory that Umar Khalid said, dhamake karwao when Trump would come, create a blast when Trump comes. Now, first of all, that is normal language, go have a blast, go break a leg. So if I say, Sree, go break a leg, it's like the police coming and charging me for threatening you mafia style that I'm going to come break your leg. Okay, first there is that. Second, remember, there is a very good fact check that was done by amazingly a left-wing fact checker, who normally are shit, but in this case very good, showing that the first report of Trump coming to India was almost a week or 2 weeks after the supposed conversation happened. Now tell me, how is it these people are so good that they know 2 weeks before the general public, they've gotten access deep into intelligence, in which case, why aren't you arresting the people in intelligence and the foreign ministry who are compromised? Right? So this is the kind of nonsensical post facto justification you hear for shocking governance failures. And this rubbish really needs to stop. This is not 10-dimensional chess being played out. It is just plain bad governance. It is shoddy governance. It is third-rate governance, and it is trying to cover up rot with all kinds of imagined post facto explanations.
Question for you. Now, there appears to be some talks being planned. What is the status of, like, as of right now, what is happening in this agitation?
Okay. Just to add to one more thing, if it
Sure.
was indeed entrapment, then understand Delhi police and intelligence bureaus are criminally responsible for the lives of those 54 people that were lost. You need to charge sheet all the IB officers and Delhi police officers who are involved in all of this, because they have direct command responsibility for those 54 lives lost if they were in fact trying to entrap these people. Number one. Number two, what is happening with the farmers is grandstanding. Okay, this is basically some kind of a there's this very scary, this is why I've been railing about the LGBTQ community here. Every time you go to gay pride in Delhi, you will see free Kashmir, free Palestine, all that nonsense. This time you're going to start seeing free the farmers as well. There is this very dangerous intersectional alliance that is being formed between all these ostracized communities. Naxals, I'm just using, I don't like the term urban Naxals, but let's use it because everybody understands what it is. Urban Naxals, Khalistanis, jihadis, and surprisingly increasing like the Congress as well, for one reason or the other. Remember the Bharatiya Kisan Union, which is the Congress's chelas in that sense. 1 year back, I tweeted out the document. Their tweet is still on record if they haven't deleted it. If you go through my timeline, you'll find it. They supported an end to the MSP and to the APMCs. Today, they are the ones spearleading these protests, which have been infiltrated by Khalistanis, by jihadis, by everything, and the Shaheen Bagh auntie going there, Shaheen Bagh ki dadi going there, and all of that. Second, understand they are doing this to buy time. Okay, they have come up, when you look at their 6 demands, you understand they don't want to go back to status quo ante. They want status quo ante plus 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 plus. They want extra demands to be met. Okay, what is the third thing that you learn from the negotiating tactics? They are coming and saying, We are not going to eat the food you provide us. We have brought home-bought food. Mind you, this is the same home-bought food that they live off on our subsidies. So we're subsidizing, if they eat at Vigyan Bhavan also, we are subsidizing them. If they bring home-bought food also, we are subsidizing them. Okay. Here's the issue. Fundamentally, what you're looking at is 95% of the rest of the farmers of this country are fine with it. Only Punjabi farmers are not fine with it. And some Haryana and some UP farmers are not fine with it. And that too, northwestern UP that borders Punjab or close to borders Punjab. So the interests of all the rest of the farmers has to be compromised for this bunch of people. They are not even a majority of farmers. Let's not call this the farmers' protest. This is a localized Punjabi middlemen and their rented pimps protest. Okay, so it is not a farmers' protest. You are legitimizing it, calling a farmers' protest. This is not a farmers' protest. Okay, so the status right now is they are aching for a fight. They are trying to get this into a confrontation because they saw, see, we think that the BJP will not lose electorally and that's fine. The BJP also thinks it's not going to lose electorally and that's fine. That is not the game these people are playing. Understand, the puppet masters here are more interested in their personal advancement because they are, those middlemen pimps anyway. And what they want is international press talking about them, Justin Trudeau talking about them, and so on and so forth. And they don't care how many farmers die in the process. Because you have not crushed down on it, because they are presenting you with increasingly unmeetable demands, they are basically ensuring this reaches a stage where it will need some kind of a violent resolution. Okay, and that will be good for them because that means more jobs for them. That means more of the pressing of this narrative of a fascist India, authoritarian India, and all that rubbish. So remember, it's different interest sets that are meeting. It's that perfectly toxic combination of elements. You can have a perfectly normal combination like H2O. Hydrogen is flammable, oxygen is flammable, but when it comes together as water, it puts out fires. This isn't like that. This is turning into a full-on hydrocarbon.
Question for you, Abhijit. All this is the responsibility of which person, the center or the state? And if it is the center, who?
So this is, on one hand, it is like all things with Modi, which we're beginning to understand, is, he is exactly like Narasimha Rao in that sense. He doesn't do things. Of course, Narasimha Rao carefully calculated his omissions. With Modi, he never calculates his omissions. He never calculates the opportunity cost. I don't think anybody taught him opportunity cost in college, in all of political science or whatever it was. So what happens out here is that you've got somebody who has a consistent record of prevaricating on law and order and allowing the situation to go out of control. So it is an error of omission on part of the government, and it is a confluence of crimes of commission by different people. The middlemen, the Congress, the assorted Khalistanis and jihadis. And it's sad that some of the farmers who are genuinely concerned are not being reached out to. The situation isn't being explained to them properly, carefully. No government TV ads, no radio ads or whatever. No attempt to try to go out and talk to them. And they have been infiltrated now by these jihadis and Khalistanis and what have you. If you look at Diljit Dosanjh, for example, he's very close to a Khalistani propaganda site that he keeps retweeting and they keep tweeting him as well. And I'm noticing very sane Punjabis go completely berserk about this. Normally, they're people you can have a reasonable conversation. There are many of my friends who I can normally have a sane conversation about this, and they just don't want to talk about this at all. It's become far too emotive an issue now. And the amazing thing is, these people aren't even farmers. So I'm like, why are you getting so agitated for farmers? And notice, Other farmers are not getting agitated. It is only Punjabis getting agitated. So see, this is taking on a full-on ethno-separatist flair. And whose fault is that, Sree? If you're allowed to get it to the stage, ultimately the buck stops with the Prime Minister. He has to take responsibility for this. How long are you going to keep blaming? Then what is the difference between you and Indira Gandhi, that for every one of her screw up she blames the foreign hand? Then what are you doing? What kind of a government are you running if you're unable to catch these foreign hands?
Well, very good questions there, and I think it's time for Modi to show leadership, because Justin Trudeau, it's none of his business to weigh in, but he is weighed down by his coalition dharma, and his biggest partner, who also happens to be a deputy prime minister, happens to be a sympathizer of Khalistan. His younger brother has made statements, and now Justin Trudeau is echoing. This guy is a buffoon. That's all I can tell you. And I feel sorry for Canadians for having elected him. Perhaps the alternative is even worse. I don't know about enough about Canadian politics to weigh in this. Abhijit, last word. What needs to happen?
What needs to happen? See, look, you know me, Sree. I never recommend, one-off measures. There is no resolution to this right now that looks good, because like I said, once the crowd gathers, the game is lost. Okay, now you need to crush these farmers, but here are the systemic things you need to put in. You need to be sacking your intelligence bosses, you need to be sacking the local IB chief, you need to be sacking the national IB chief. And unless IB gets its house in order and are able to correctly model and predict these things, and arrest these people, why haven't you arrested these people that were provoking these protests to take place? Or you never had them under your intelligence cover in the first place, right? Your surveillance network. So fixing IB and your intelligence apparatus is number one. Number two, you need to institutionalize this fact that the BJP's personal political gains are not national gains. Okay, sometimes the BJP interest, electoral interest, is deeply contrary to the Indian national interest. So the BJP is quite capable of being an anti-national party in that sense. Okay. Third, very, very important, you have to drum this into every single security force, and you need to make a legal example of this, that first you prevent a crowd from gathering, number one. Number two, any crowd that gathers without a legitimate with all the permissions, that causes a public nuisance, or that decides to cross the law in any form or way, is to be dealt with instantly, immediately, and not wait for a court order that comes 3 months post facto.
Thank you very much, Abhijit. Much food for thought here, and as always, it's a concern when normal people's lives are getting disrupted in this brutal way. And if they don't do it fast, they're going to have repetitions of this. The whole government will be, completely put into some sort of a standstill. And then when elections come, they'll say, "Oh, these guys did nothing." So this is something, I don't know, maybe Gujarat, state politics was easier for Modi to control. I don't know what it is, but I think Modi needs to act and act decisively. Thank you very much, Abhijit, and we'll be back with more such interesting conversation. I hope you can at least carry your BMW on your head. That way you can also get some exercise while you go from home to work.
Thank you. And maybe those watching this program will be kind enough to subsidize a poor farmer like me, who has to drive around in a poor little BMW and live in such squalid surroundings. Thank you. Any subsidies, please send them to me. I am on UPI, and you can also pay me through direct bank transfer. Thank you. Thank you. I'm starving. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was said in jest here, but as always, a pleasure to have you. Namaskar.